everybody, I'm Cambria Hart, and today I'm going to be talking about how propaganda is used during wartime. So, imagine living during World War II. Every street corner shows posters that say, "Buy war bonds," or loose lips sink ships. You turn on the radio and hear, "Do your part for victory." It sounds like information, but it's persuasion. These messages are meant to shape how you think, feel, and even how you act. Propaganda is not just a thing of the past, it's still all around us, online, in advertising, and in politics. Understanding how propaganda works helps us recognize when information is trying to guide our behavior. After researching scholars like Jacques Ellul, Megan Heiska, and Edward Bernays, I found that propaganda goes far beyond simple persuasion. It doesn't just spread messages, it creates movements. Today, I'll be explaining what propaganda really is, how it works during wartime, and why it's so effective at shaping both thought and action. When most people hear propaganda, they think of biased posters or political lies, but that's only part of it. Philosopher Jacques Ellul argued that modern propaganda doesn't just change opinions, it aims to provoke action. It pushes people to enlist, obey, or fight. Another scholar, Megan Heiska, said propaganda goes further. It actually creates publics. That means it builds new social groups, communities that act together under a shared identity. And Edward Bernays, often called the father of public relations, described propaganda as the engineering of consent. His idea was that if you shape the events people experience, you don't need to argue with them. You can simply make certain behaviors feel natural. So propaganda isn't just about ideas, it's about identity and behavior. It's about forming groups that act in ways the propagandists want. How propaganda works during wartime. In example 1, Nazi black radio. During World War II, Nazi Germany placed all media under the control of Joseph Goebbels' propaganda ministry. The regime used two types of propaganda: white propaganda, which was openly German, and black propaganda, which disguised its origins to appear local. One example was the radio called Caledonia, a fake Scottish station that broadcast messages promoting the idea of a separate peace and the slogan, "Not Scotland's War." The broadcast used ingredients, anti-Churchill sentiment, imitation Scottish accents, and false rumors to appear authentic. The goal was to divide the United Kingdom and lower public morale. However, the effort largely failed due to poor radio reception, inconsistent programming, and a lack of credibility, demonstrating that propaganda can only succeed when it resonates with the audience's genuine identity and experiences. Example 2, Iran. Following World War II, Iran became a battleground for propaganda among three major powers: the Soviet Union, Britain, and the United States. The Soviets, through the Two-Day Party, promoted workers' solidarity and class consciousness. Using the Central Council of Federal Trade Unions, they organized strikes and distributed labor-focused propaganda to advance oil nationalization and expand communist influence in Iran. Meanwhile, Britain and its Anglo-Iranian Oil Company deployed around 300 propaganda workers who built social clubs, radio networks, mobile film units, and printed newspapers. Their campaigns portrayed the British president as progressive, generous, and vital to Iran's development. In response, the United States established the Iranian-American Society, hosting cultural lectures and health programs to promote a friendly image of American life. In March 1949, it launched Voice of America Persian, broadcast to share democratic and capitalist ideals. By 1950, even Soviet intelligence acknowledged that American propaganda efforts had surpassed those of both Britain and the USSR, showing how global influence in the early Cold War extended beyond military power into the realm of information and culture. Each power sought to construct its own version of a loyal public. The Soviets aimed to build a base of politically active workers committed to socialist ideals. The British tried to shape satisfied industrial communities that viewed the colonial presence as beneficial and modernizing. The United States, in turn, work to foster pro-Western citizens who admired American values and democratic principles. Together, these efforts reflect Edward Bernays' concept that propaganda does more than deliver information, it creates public. Through repeated messaging and culture influence, each nation sought to form groups whose behaviors, beliefs, and loyalties advance the propagandist's larger political and ideological goals. The strategies developed during wartime and early Cold War propaganda continue to shape modern information battles. During the Cold War, programs such as Radio Free Europe broadcast messages promoting democratic ideals behind the Iron Curtain, using persuasive storytelling to influence public opinion and inspire resistance to communism. Today, similar methods appear in digital form through social media campaigns, targeted advertising, and online disinformation. While the platforms have changed, the underlying goal remains the same: to mobilize behavior. Modern propaganda encourages people not only to believe certain narratives, but to act on them, whether by voting, sharing posts, attending protests, or turning against perceived enemies. The shift from radio waves to digital networks show that propaganda's tools evolve, but its purpose to shape collective identity and action endures. Social media. Why propaganda is so effective. Propaganda succeeds because it speaks to emotions rather than logic. It taps into powerful feelings such as fear, pride, and hope, creating a sense of belonging and unity. By connecting emotionally, propaganda makes its messages feel personal and urgent. Messages repeated often and delivered by trusted sources, whether government officials, radio announcers, or social media influencers, begin to feel true over time. Familiarity builds comfort, and comfort breeds belief, making repetition one of propaganda's most reliable tools. Propaganda doesn't just tell people what to think, it shapes who they believe they are by defining identity. It guides behavior. Edward Bernays' Torches of Freedom campaign, for example, reframed smoking as a symbol of women's independence, demonstrating how propaganda can turn personal actions into expressions of identity. Jacques Ellul observed that propaganda's ultimate goal is to make men act. It succeeds when individuals internalize its messages, believing that the propagandist's goals reflect their own values, roles, and everyday lives. Propaganda fails when it feels inauthentic or disconnected from its audience. Campaigns like Nazi Germany's Radio Caledonia collapsed because listeners rejected the false identity being offered, proving that successful propaganda must align with real emotions and social identities to endure. Propaganda is not simply biased or misleading communication. It is a structured system designed to shape collective behavior and identity, especially during times of war. Throughout history, propaganda has gone beyond influencing what people believe. It directs how they act and how they see themselves. It constructs publics through tools like radio, print, public events, and culture messaging. Its effectiveness depends on emotional appeal, constant repetition, and powerful sense of being it creates among audiences. From World War II broadcast to the spread of digital disinformation today, propaganda continues to define how societies understand themselves and their place in global conflicts. Whether through national pride, fear, or moral duty, it still shapes collective perception and mobilizes behavior. As Jacques Ellul cautioned, propaganda's greatest danger lies not in controlling thought, but in directing action. In every war, past or present, the strongest weapon is not the bomb or the bullet, but the story that persuades people to use them.